Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Federico Rondoni, and I'm here today representing ESA to talk about the network of resources together with William Ray that will give us a presentation on the Sentinel Hub. And I will just briefly go to explain what the network of resources is, then I will pass the floor to William to give us the presentation, and at the end we will have a session of question and answer. We ask you to type your questions if you have them during the presentation in the chat. We'll take care of the questions at the end of the presentation. So the network of resources is an ESA initiative aiming to bring user to data through the use of cloud environment. We have multiple providers with several services that allow us to work with data directly in the cloud without having the necessity to download big amount of data to work on our local machines. This is a webinar of the NOR webinar series. It started a couple of months ago, and we will have session until February 2024. So we invite you to go to our channels, to EO4 Society website, to the ESA Twitter accounts, to follow the activities of the NOR webinar series. And today, as I was saying, we will have a presentation on Sentinel Hub. So without stealing more time, I will pass the floor to William for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Federico. Yeah, hi. My name is William Ray. I'm a remote sensing engineer here at Sentinel Hub. And today I'm going to talk to you about how you can access the Sentinel Hub APIs, which is part of the NOR offering. So I will share my screen and can kick off the presentation. Okay, yeah. As I said, my name is William Ray. Today I'll quickly recap the Sentinel Hub APIs that are available, a little bit about how they work and a bit of the concepts behind it. And then I'll go into detail about 3 of our core APIs. So Catalog API, where you can search and discover satellite imagery scenes. Processing API, which is our most commonly used API to access the imagery itself. And then Statistical API, where you can bypass the pixels completely and obtain statistics from your imagery. After showing a quick use case, which is used plenty of the Sentinel Hub APIs, I'll go into a Jupyter Notebook demo before wrapping up with showing you how you can scale up your workflow from smaller areas to larger areas or larger timescales. And then we'll wrap up and have some Q&A as well. So I guess to kick things off, if you can see it from space, we believe that you can monitor it from space. The applications are hugely wide-ranging, so it can be from forest fires to flood events, deforestation, agriculture. As I said, anything you can see from space, there's a way you can monitor it. Resolutions can be as detailed as 30 centimeters for the commercial providers. But a lot of this data is obviously available for free, such as the Copernicus program, which is the European Union's Earth observation program. So this is the Sentinel satellites. But traditionally, accessing and using satellite imagery has been a bit of a pain. There are plenty of different file types to deal with. You've got metadata. You need to deal with the projection that your images are in. How do I stack it all together? How do I process all this data as well? If, for example, you want to look at a time series of a whole year, traditionally you'd need all the data locally available to you. That's huge amounts of data. And that has created very chaotic, tedious and costly workflows. So this was how the idea of Sentinel Hub came about. And we wanted to make the Sentinel Hub APIs or make satellite imagery accessible to the masses through our APIs. So There's several data or satellite data sources that are easily accessible through Sentinel Hub, and they can be browsed and analyzed through our APIs, either to your local environment or web applications. And so this means that you can quickly access the imagery on your laptop, wherever you want, and you don't need to worry about storage, processing, decompression algorithms, metadata, or the sensor bands that you require. We take away all of the pain of processing data and give you more time to analyze it. So, as I said, on the left, so the data are available. We've got open imagery. So from the Copernicus program, we had the Sentinel missions, so Sentinel-1, Sentinel-2, Sentinel-3, Sentinel-5P. We also have access to the full Landsat archive as well in Sentinel Hub. You have access to commercial imagery providers such as Airbus, Planet, and Maxar. This data is paid for on top of your Sentinel Hub subscription, but it means that it's delivered straight into the Sentinel Hub ecosystem, making it really easy to access and analyze. You can also bring in your own data. This could be anything from like aerial imagery to drone imagery, as long as it meets the requirements for Sentinel Hub. Basically, it needs to be a cloud-optimized GeoTIFF and a few other parameters which are easy to generate using GDAL. You can use it in Sentinel Hub. And you also have access to plenty of other data sets in the Sentinel Hub ecosystem. So these range from, say, the Korean land cover maps produced by Copernicus program, as well as digital elevation models. And you can access this data through a variety of methods. So this can be programmatically. So Sentinel Hub requests support JavaScript, Python, R. You can access data through OGC procedures. So this is WMS layers, WMTS, so on. And these can be used to power either applications in the cloud, so web applications such as the EO browser, which I'm sure plenty of people are familiar with. But you can also stream the data into your own GIS, whether that's in the cloud or desktop. So to give an overview of our APIs, as I've talked about, you have the OGC API, which allows you to stream satellite data into your GIS application. We have Process API, which is a RESTful API that provides access to either the raw satellite data, processed rendered images, so you can get some really cool visualizations, but you can also calculate vegetation indices and output those. And the beauty of Process API is you're only accessing the pixels that you require. So whether that's a small area of interest within a Sentinel-2 tile or a subset of the spectral bands. Batch Processing API is the same as Processing API, but enables you to request large areas or longer time periods of satellite data. But the data from this is delivered asynchronously. So this gets delivered to an S3 bucket, for instance, and that could be on CreaDS or AWS, for instance. We also have Catalog API, which allows you to search and view geospatial information about the different data collections that we offer. This is all stack compliant as well. We have Bring Your Own Data, where you can import raster data sets that you own and use into Sentinel Hub. We have third-party data imports. This is where you can purchase and order commercial data, again for use in Sentinel Hub. Statistical API, where we can bypass the pixels, calculate statistics for satellite imagery again. So this could be, say, a time series of NDVI for a field of interest you may have. We also offer a batch version of this as well, where you can calculate statistics for hundreds or even thousands of polygons all at once, which is a really powerful application. And lastly, we have Asynchronous Process API, which is kind of a bridge between process and batch processing API. This allows you to outputs much larger images. It still gets delivered to S3 bucket, but in contrast to batch processing API, the areas are smaller, but also there's no tiling involved. So I'll dive into a little bit more detail on sort of our core APIs. So let's start with Catalog API. As I said, it's an API which is implementing the stack specification, so describing the geospatial information of the data set itself. So this could include like the platform and constellation. So this example on the right, we're looking at Sentinel-2 data, and we can see that it's on Sentinel-2B, the sensor. We can see that the cloud cover is 0% in this instance, and you can also get access to other metadata such as the geometry of the Sentinel-2 tile. But essentially it allows you to search the data collection that you require, that you want for your area of interest, but also maybe specified time periods too. So this takes me on to Process API. So even though sorry, I had Siri interrupting me there. So even though satellite imagery data is often distributed in tiles, that's how we've traditionally downloaded it as a zip file, then we've clipped it to our area of interest. This, when you're using Sentinel Hub, is not required. So what this API does is hide a lot of the complexity and simply makes the data available for the chosen area of interest you have and the time periods. So all you need to do is provide a payload and an eval script. So the payload contains information such as maybe a bounding box you may have, maybe a shapefile, as well as say a time range as well. So here in this example, we're looking at 6-month periods, but this can be as long or as short as you wish. In addition, you need to provide an eval script. This is just a very simple bit of JavaScript. This example here, we're just calling 3 bands from Sentinel-2, band 3, 4, and 8, which are the green, red, and near-infrared bands. And then we're just outputting a false color composite. So near-infrared here is in the red channel, but this could be any band combination you want. In your evaluate pixel function, you could calculate NDVI, output that instead. The possibilities are kind of endless. It's kind of limited only by your imagination. So to see this in action, we've got this example here. Let's see if this runs. I'm not sure that's running, that's fine. We'll move on to Statistical API. This enables you to calculate statistics based on the satellite imagery itself without having to download the imagery itself, which is really great if you want to reduce the amount of processing that you're doing. If you don't actually need to look at the image, then why should you? If you can just get the statistics straight from it, then that's perfect. A lot of people don't actually require the imagery itself to meet the needs of their users. So in your API request, you can specify an area of interest, time period, and an eval script, and then pick the statistical measures that you wish to calculate. So very similar to Process API, but a few subtle differences that we'll see later. And these statistics are returned in a easy to read JSON format. So you can easily convert it to a pandas data frame and then maybe visualize it using matplotlib, for instance. So yeah, here's an example on the right of what kind of statistics you can calculate. So just to re-emphasize, this is a traditional workflow that you'd have. You'd download your Sentinel-2 tile. You maybe would calculate NDVI for it. You'd then isolate a field of interest that you're interested in. And then from there, you might calculate the statistics using a Python library, or maybe in QGIS. That's statistical API lets you bypass these 3 steps, and you can get straight to just the statistics that you actually require. So an example of this here is taken from the EA browser application. And here we're looking at this field of interest. We've plotted NDVI over a whole year here, and we can see how NDVI changes, goes up during the growing season, back down during the winter months. It's a really powerful API. So before I dive into the demo, let's have a look at a use case example of how Sentinel Hub APIs can be used. This is the digital twin of Alps. It's an advanced decision support system for water and hydrogeological risk management in the Alps. And the tool brings together EO data and also state-of-the-art modeling in hydrology. And it's an interactive platform to explore and access the data really easily. Here's how it looks. So we're looking at shallow landslide source susceptibility mapping here over, I think this is the province, or this is somewhere in northern Italy, Trento, I believe. But this has been built on top of Sentinel Hub APIs. So data has been imported into Sentinel Hub using the Bring Your Own Cloud Optimized TIFF API. Data has been requested using Process API and OGC APIs, and statistics that users using the platform can derive are being derived using our statistical API. And of course, the front end of this application is all based on EA browser. Okay, so next we are going to go into the Jupyter Notebook demonstration. There will be a link to this at the end, so you can actually go through this notebook later on in your own time. But for now, we'll go through it. Yeah. So here we're running this in the EuroDataCube Jupyter Hub instance, powered by EOX. So the first thing we need to do is just import some libraries. So we have some core Python libraries to import, an EDC library here where we set up our environment variables, as well as some Sentinel Hub Python package functions too. So let's import these. And then we're going to pass our credentials into the notebook. So these are actually automatically configured in your EOX Hub workspace, which is a really, really nice way that Sentinel Hub's been integrated into this application. So we will run that, and then we're going to set an area of interest. So for this, I've picked an area of interest just south of Graz in Austria. So we're close to the Slovenian border. When you run this notebook in your own time, you can actually create your own bounding box. You can visit this bounding box finder website, and then you can insert it here into this cell. And then you can use Sentinel Hub in an area of interest which is more relevant to yourselves. Okay, so now I've created this area of interest. Let's use it to search for some imagery. So we're going to use the catalog API first. The first thing we're going to do is just initialize the Sentinel Hub catalog class before we actually build a request and run it. So here we're using the area of interest bounding box that I've just specified. We're inputting a time interval of between the 1st of May 2022 and the 20th of May 2022. And we're searching for Sentinel-2 Level 2A data. And that's it. Now, if we run this cell, we're going to return back the tile numbers or the tile names and IDs for this particular area of interest. So we can see we have 8 results. So it means it's good. We have some data that we can then find. So the next step, obviously, is to visualize this data. And for that, we're going to use Process API. So in the first example, we're going to return a true color image. And for this, we need to build up a Sentinel Hub request object. So the first things first is to define an eval script. We're just going to return a true color image, nice and simple. So we just need band 4, band 3, and band 2. And then we return them here as a free band image. We then input this into our request. So here we have the eval script equals the eval script true color, which we defined here. And then in our input data, we have Sentinel-2 level 2A as our data collection. And actually, we extended the time interval to the end of May. And the last argument here we have is we actually want the most recent image in that time period. So what Sentinel Hub will do in the background is find the image closest to the 31st of May 2022 in that area of interest. And then lastly, in our response, we're just returning a PNG image for now. This has just been saved to memory in this instance, but you can also download this locally to your Jupyter Hub storage or locally to your computer. And we also define our bounding box and also the size of the bounding box, which was defined earlier in the notebook. Okay, so let's run this cell and a couple of others. And we have a little helper function here called plot image, which you'll find in the same repository, which I'll share later. But that's not looking too good. We found a nice cloudy image here, which would normally be a bit of a pain to deal with, but with Sentinel Hub, it's really simple to actually solve this. So here in the mosaicing order, we can actually specify instead the least CC, so the least cloud cover in our time period. So now Sentinel Hub will actually look for the least cloudy image based on the Sentinel-2 tile metadata, and it will actually output this image instead. So if we run these cells again, we now return a nice cloud-free image. We'll just bring a bit of internet problems. There we go. There we go. So no cloud at all in this image, which is really nice. And of course, it's very simple to actually change your visualization too. We can return to our eval script here. And let's say we want a false color image using near infrared in the red band. So we're going to change our input bands to band 8, 4, and 3. And we'll change this in our return as well. And let's run these cells again. And what we'll have now is a nice false color composite. It's as simple as that to change your visualization. And you can see that we're outputting data in seconds, which is really makes it nice and easy for you. So next, we're going to look at an NDVI visualization. So we have a different eval script this time. We're actually just calling 3 bands. We have the band 4, so the red band, band 8, near infrared band, and we have a data mask band as well. We then, in our evaluate pixel function, calculate NDVI. So we have the formula here of near infrared minus the red band divided by the 2 bands added together. And then we're using the result of this to actually populate a visualization. So here these image files are a 3-band image, and these are in various shades of green so that we return a nice to look at visualization rather than just a grayscale image. The request is actually the same as previously. Okay, we have a shorter time range, but we're using the least cloudy image. but everything else is the same as previously for the true color visualization. So if we run these cells, we've returned a nice NDVI visualization. So we can see the areas which are dark green here, areas where it's highly vegetated, and then the lighter shades of green and the sort of more yellowy colors are areas where there's less vegetation. So that's good. We've seen how we can visualize data using Sentinel Hub and explore the data a little bit as well. But let's now actually generate some statistics. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to request and then plot an NDVI time series for a single field. And then afterwards, I'll show you how you can do it for multiple fields as well, using the basic APIs. So very similar rules apply again for building the eval script. But there are a couple of little subtleties that are different from the process API. So we should always actually return a data mask output. And we also need to actually define our output separately within our eval script. And then lastly, the default value of the sample type compared to process API, which was an unsigned integer 8 raster. In this instance, it's a float 32, which makes sense if you're deriving statistics, because obviously NDVI values range from 0 to 1, and you can't actually output that in the unsigned integer 8, where you need whole numbers. So let's have a look at our eval script. Yeah, it's quite similar to last time actually, except this time we can see the output has two separate IDs. We have an NDVI ID and the data mask, which although we're not going to be visualizing it or using it, it still needs to be defined. And then lastly, in our evaluate pixel function, we calculate NDVI, same as last time, but we're not actually visualizing anything this time. So our output is just index, really simple. So let's just define our eval script to get things started. And then we're going to pick two fields from our previous area of interest we looked at. I've defined these as just, these are GeoJSON strings. And I can run this. Sorry, one second. And then let's just plot this on a map just so we know what we're looking at. Okay, it's just taking a little bit of time. Okay, while that's loading though, I'll go through the rest of the statistical API request. So as we've defined our eval script, we actually have a couple of parameters to add. We have a time interval. So this defines the time range of our request. This is defined here, where we are looking at data from the 1st of April 2022 to the 30th of August 2022, so the growing season. We then define a aggregation interval. Here we're using 10 days. So we're going to use an acquisition every 10 days. And then lastly, we have a data filter. So we want to get rid of any cloudy images. So we have a maximum cloud coverage of 10%, which we're using. And the rest of the request is very similar to what we used previously. So just going to restart my kernel. It seems like I have a couple of issues. So just re-import my imports and credentials. And then we'll start the statistical stuff again. Okay. Okay, so yeah, just to show that we have a field down here and another field here which we're going to compare. So let's run our request and we're going to see what our response looks like. So this is going to be the raw JSON file format. So this is what it looks like. So it's not great for us to look at. It's great for a computer to read, but not so much for the human eye. So the next stage for us to take is to transform it into a pandas data frame. So I have some helper functions here to help me achieve this, and I'll use these to convert the JSON file from here into a nice, easy to read pandas data frame. So you can see sort of trends straight away, where we can see the mean NDVI is definitely fluctuating over the time period. But let's plot this actually using matplotlib. So run this function here, and we can see our NDVI time series over the time period that we requested. So that's nice to look at. We can see the mean, the standard deviation. We could also add the minimum and maximum NDVI too, but we chose not to in this instance. And then of course you can go a step further. It's even more useful to actually compare different fields to each other. So I'm going to run the same request again, but for our second field as well. Convert it to a pandas data frame, and then we will plot them on the same plots. And here we go. So we can see that both fields obviously growing at a similar rate, it seems, peaking sometime in June 2022, and then whereas the field 1 obviously got either harvested or mowed or something like that. Field 2, the NDVI actually stayed pretty constant up until August. So yeah, this shows what you can do with the core Sentinel Hub APIs to firstly discover data, secondly to visualize it, and then thirdly to actually do some quite powerful analysis on the data. So while this looks very easy to achieve, it's important to remember that in seconds we've just crunched months of Sentinel-2 data, which is really impressive. So I'll go back to the presentation and talk a little bit about scaling up your analysis from there. So the advantage, obviously, of building your workflow in Sentinel Hub is that it's based in the cloud, and that makes it really easy to scale up your workflows. The eval scripts that we've looked at so far in Process API and Statistical API can both be applied to a batch processing or a batch statistical API request. And this means that you don't need to drastically change your workflow as you scale it up. So Sentinel Hub offers obviously 3 APIs, sorry, that allow you to scale up your workflows. So the async processing API for larger areas, but then batch processing API, which lets you process satellite imagery on country scales, continental, even a global scale. So a really good example of this, we use this exhaustively, is how we used batch processing API to generate a true color cloudless mosaic of Slovenia, which we're looking at here. And this cloudless mosaic used cloud-free pixels from every single Sentinel-2 acquisition from a single year, and then generates a cloud-free composite. And this is something that wouldn't be feasible to do on your laptop. You'd need to download hundreds of Sentinel-2 scenes and then crunch them all together to create a cloudless mosaic. It's not something you'd want to do locally. But being able to do it on the cloud means you can do this. And similarly, Batch Statistical API could take the example we've just looked at, comparing two fields, and you could process hundreds or even thousands of different field parcels and compare the NDVI time series signals over either a single growing season or multiple growing seasons. And this can be used to monitor or even map different crop types. These kind of services are also being used in the implementation of the Common Agricultural Policy as well. Okay, so to summarize, I've reintroduced the purpose and goals of the Sentinel Hub APIs. Talked about the features and functionality of the catalog, processing, and statistical APIs. And the Jupyter Notebook that we looked at demoed how to search, discover, visualize Sentinel-2 Level 2A imagery using the Sentinel Hub APIs, and then also how you can utilize the statistical API to monitor NDVI over field parcels using the Sentinel-2 data archive. And of course, just want to say you can stay tuned for future webinars where we can go into more detail into our other APIs, go into some more advanced use cases. So today I only gave you a flavor of how to scale up your workflows, but it would be great to present to everyone some use cases where we've done that. Okay. And lastly, there's some useful links. So when this PowerPoint presentation is shared with you, you can then visit these resources and even follow along the Jupyter Notebook that I presented today. So I will pass back to Federico.
Thank you very much, William, for this very helpful presentation. I don't know if any one of the attendees has some questions. If so, please type them in the chat. Let's see. So there is one person asking, is it possible to locally download the data acquired through the NOR?
Yes. Yeah, of course, with all the APIs, you can download the data locally to your laptop. The advantage, obviously, is that you don't need to download a whole Sentinel-2 tile and then process it on your laptop. It's already pre-processed for you in the cloud.
Yes, exactly. We want to remind you that this is very important. You can process the data that you need in the cloud, and then, of course, if you need to download something, you can. But the main, let's say, goal of the network of resources is really to bring user to data, to avoid that people need big machines, big desktop computer to process data. Okay, let's see if there are other questions. Yes. Okay. Thanks for the answer. And okay, so in the meantime, that if other people want to ask anything, I will present briefly the NOR portal and how to access the resources that William presented to us. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So if you go to the nor-discover.org website, you will be redirected to the Network of Resources portal. The Network of Resources portal is this land page where you can find useful information related to the NOR initiative from ESA, like for instance the number of approved projects and the number of providers onboarded. And you can also find useful information about how to access the services, about what is going on in the NOR community. For instance, you can have news about new providers onboarded, new services onboarded, and so on, the list of providers, and how to also apply if you are a provider to the network of resources. By going to the portfolio, you can actually access all the services the NOR is delivering to users. by clicking Access it here, you will be redirected to a new web page that is the NOR portfolio. In the NOR portfolio, you find all the providers with all the possible services. You can just scroll down here, or you can type a text search in this field. All the services are divided by type and so on. And in this case, for instance, if we want to access Sentinel Hub, we can type Sentinel Hub here, and in theory, it should open the research. Okay, fantastic. Yes. And you can scroll down. Okay, it's also find all the Sentinel related collections and so on. Sentinel is a keyword very used inside the network of resources. So when you find the service you want to apply to, which is quite done here. Okay. Then you can have more information related to the collections, details, and so on. You have a provider help desk link, which is really important because we want to stress out that we really ask people to contact the provider first to understand if the services they are going to ask the network of resources are helpful for the project. And then you have this tool, which is the pricing wizard. The pricing wizard brings you to a form that you can complete to ask for specific resources. You have to state your project type, commercial, research, pre-commercial, or educational. The commercial project is not awarded with sponsorship from ESA, so you need to have a research or pre-commercial or educational project in order to be eligible for funding. Let's say we have a research project. Then we want to ask for a specific resource by clicking this tick box, and we can change the number of units and the duration in months, and we will have an overview of the cost. By going down to the page, we have an overview of the total cost we are going to request for the services, and two different options. The first one is to go directly to the provider website if you want to purchase the services directly from the provider, or if you are not eligible for ESA sponsorship. Otherwise, you have ask ESA for sponsorship, and you need to select, first of all, if you're working on an ESA project or not. If yes, you will have already assigned an ESA technical officer and an ESA contract number. So this is something that you already know if you're going to apply for an ESA project or not. Let's say we are not applying for an ESA project and we are not co-fund the cost. The eligible criteria says that you are eligible for sponsorship only up to 5,000 euros and for maximum of 1 year license. So everything that goes above these levels need to be co-founded. And then we click on Ask ESA for sponsorship. Now we have the form itself for the project, and we start by filling out the project title, the name of the project coordinator, the work category of the project coordinator, the official email address. It's really important, it must be the organization email address. We cannot process requests that are coming from personal email addresses. Project organization name, country, web page, and address. And then we start filling out the fields with project objectives, which is what you're going to do, what's the final goal of your project, the implementation methodology, how you want to reach your final goal, the expected results, the justification for selected services and provider. And this is why we advise you to contact first the provider, because here it's really important to state why these services that you are requesting are helpful for your project. The description of work within the cloud environment. This is what we were talking before. So we really want to see how you're going to use the services within the cloud environment and not just accessing data, because for that ESA has different, let's say, programs like the third-party mission programs. And then the geographical area of interest of the project. So you are working over a country, a region, a city, and so on. And if it is the first time you have applied for NOR. If it's not, you need to state also the previous request ID for the same project that you already submitted to the NOR. Then you will have an overview of the sponsored resource. And finally, you need to select an expected date of submission of the set of slides in the form of month and year. What it is, the set of slides is an actual set of slides done in PowerPoint or a PowerPoint-like tool made of 4 to 5 pages, where you need to state why the resources you requested through the network of resources were helpful for your project, even if you didn't reach your final goal. Let's say you are working on a research project, it might be that you didn't reach your final goal at the end, but we want to see how you use the resources you requested through the NOR. Then you can sign up for the NOR newsletter, and you must accept the ESA privacy policy. The last thing that you need to do is to export the sponsoring request. It will create a PDF. The PDF needs to be signed, and if you're working on an ESA project, also the ESA technical officer needs to sign the PDF. And then once you have the PDF signed, you need to email it to the nor-sponsorship-request@esa.int. Then there will be the evaluation process that usually takes around 6 working days, but it might be longer if we need more information from your side to understand better what are you working on. So this completes the presentation of the Network of Resources portal and sponsorship procedure. So let's see if there are other questions, which seems we don't have. So if there are no other questions, I think we can wrap up the session. I will thank you very much really again, William, for your presentation and all the participants.